Welcome everyone to the Change Starts Here podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Odham. And on this week's episode, we welcome a longtime friend of mine, Bill McIntyre, who oversees FranklinCovey's education international team. And we dive into his background, serving overseas and living overseas. But we dive in most importantly to his mission of serving every country, every school, every student, and trying to reach everyone with the 7 habits and the LeaderMe content. We dive into the challenges that they face from country to country with the politics, culture, and systems that are inherent in any local culture. And it's pretty fascinating to learn from his experiences there. Recently, Bill and Sean Covey both went to Romania, where they met with students there and they met with refugees from Ukraine. So that was an interesting thing to dive into. We dive into kind of his experiences in other countries, from China to Brazil and other parts of the world, and his kind of passion for Africa. Bill is a passionate person. He is, as I say in the interview, he's someone who says what he means and means what he says, and it's someone I greatly admire and greatly appreciate. And so it's an honor to have him on the podcast. It's a great conversation. And every time I'm around him or his team, he's got an awesome team of people. They're just so thoughtful and engaging, and they care so much about the mission of improving people's lives all across the world. And so it's a great conversation. If you're interested in international affairs or interested in education across the globe, Bill's a really interesting person to learn from. So as always, thank you so much for making time to listen to this podcast. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Your support means the world to us and me specifically. So thank you and enjoy this conversation. Bill's an amazing person. So Bill, I think we've known each other 10 years now, and I would say that I am incredibly excited to have you on the podcast because if nothing else, you are one of the most passionate, thoughtful, inspiring people I get a chance to work with and know. And so I thank you for joining us today.
Wow. Well, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's been 10 years, but it probably has, yeah. And I appreciate those kind words. But some people might not call it passion, but it is. I'm passionate about what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, the same question we ask every guest to start with is, who are you and what do you love about what you do?
Who am I? Wow. That's a tough question. Because you look at our roles, what we teach at FranklinCovey, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a grandfather, I'm an employee, I'm a friend. So we got a lot of roles in life, but I think I'm passionate about this work because it really aligns with my personal mission. I think I worked in many jobs, I guess not that many, but 3 or 4 jobs in my career. And this is one that it was just like everything came together, and this is really what I want to do. It's like, it was almost meant to be. That sounds kind of cliche, but yeah, I just love being able to do something that I actually get paid for, which I'm glad I get paid for it. Sometimes I like to say I feel guilty, but I guess I don't, because I need to get paid. But you're doing something for other people. You're doing something that's making a difference, and it just makes your life so much easier and happier.
Well, you talk about, you and I both are similar in nature that we don't mix words. We say what we mean and mean what we say. And so when you say, people who are listening probably don't know you as well as I do. So when you say, this is, kind of a dream role for you, I look at your career and think, first, it seems like you've always had some sort of affinity to international work. Is that true? And if so, where did that come from and how long has that been there for you?
Yeah, you're right. And it's funny, in high school, I studied Spanish and I didn't do well. I lived in California. You would think that everybody spoke Spanish and it was all around me, and it was. I didn't speak a foreign language. As a young man, I went on a mission for my church, and they wanted me to go to Japan. And I was like, you're kidding. And they wanted me to learn Japanese. So at a young age of 19, I studied Japanese and spent almost 2 years in Japan. And it really transformed my life. It gave me a new perspective on the world. I had a passion for learning languages and new cultures. I came back and studied Japanese and Asian studies in college. I later did an advanced degree in business, but I was really passionate about these different cultures and languages. And I actually married a woman from Japan. My wife is Japanese, and we lived about half our married life. We've been married 35 years now, and half of it we lived in Japan, and half of it we lived in the U.S. But my first job after graduating from college was I was hired by an international trade publisher to go to their Japan operation, and I started in sales. And wow. And so that language capability and understanding the Japanese culture in particular at that time led to my first job. And I spent about 7 years in Japan, and I worked with all of Asia while I was out there. And so my first experience was really in the Asia Pacific region.
When you think about that transformative experience, I mean, and I'm not thinking from like a mission context, but just the power of, being 19 and getting that type of rich experience abroad, is that something that you wish more kids would have access to because it would shape their future in a unique way?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was transformation. It was life-changing, and it wasn't, because it was a mission for a church, but it was just transformational on me just to see the world and see things in a different perspective. We talk about everywhere you go in the world, and we have issues in the U.S. with discrimination against people. It's not until you're a minority in another country that you can understand how people in your country might feel if they're a minority. And Japanese love Americans, but it's interesting. I was turned down rental places because I was not Japanese, and I don't have any animosity towards the Japanese, but it's just a different perspective, You just learn a lot, and you learn to see things in a new way. And it made me want to learn more. It really was a kind of an educational awakening for me. It helped me just want to learn more and new things and about the world.
So I see where your passion comes for the international community now. So where did your passion come for working with schools and young people?
Well, maybe, I started with FranklinCovey back in 2001. So I've been with the company over 20 years. And when I talk about this being my dream job, as I mentioned earlier, it was after I'd had that experience in Japan. I'd also worked for companies in the US. I had run small businesses in sales and marketing and publishing organizations. And I was asked, well, actually, I was working with FranklinCovey on a couple projects. In fact, it was way back before FranklinCovey merged in the late 1990s. We were working on some intercultural projects about training. And I actually did a program in Brazil and in Singapore. It was a program we were piloting for FranklinCovey. And I wasn't a FranklinCovey employee, but it was how I kind of got my foot in the door with FranklinCovey. And in 2001, after having that experience, FranklinCovey asked me if they offered me a position to go to Japan and run their Japan operation. And so I did that in 2001. And while there, I was in Japan with FranklinCovey 2001 to 2008, running FranklinCovey Japan and Asia Pacific there. While there, it was before the LeaderMe started, right? And I found a company that wanted to take the 7 Habits to a bunch of kids in Japan, students. And it was back when we just had the teens content. We had this big, thick binder of teens lessons. It was like a year-long teens course. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's quite old now. But we took that and we took all those lessons out and we translated them into Japanese, and we made these little workbook for kids, which is very reminiscent of what we have right now with our student guides, which we use in LeaderMe schools. And this company went out, and we had, literally 10,000 kids in Japan studying the 7 Habits in these learning centers. It wasn't in the schools proper, but it was in these after-school study centers in Japan. And for me, I was working in the corporate enterprise business, running the whole FranklinCovey operation in Japan. And, we were a pretty big office. In fact, Japan was, I think, the largest FranklinCovey operation outside the US. But for me, the thing that excited me most was this project we did with these students and these kids.
Wow.
And so I kind of developed this passion for education back then before we had the LeaderMe. And it's interesting, that business is still going in Japan today. In our office, it's gone over a lot of changes, but it still exists today. So in 2011, when I came back to the US, I met Sean again and talked to Sean, and Sean was saying, hey, we really need somebody to do something internationally for us. And I'm like, wow. And it's education. I mean, this is it, right? So that's when we started back here in the US leading this team.
Yeah. So when you started, and I think about just your passion for this work, did you clarify a mission then that is still the same now, or has that mission kind of evolved over time? Because we were just in a meeting together a couple of weeks ago, and when you talk about the mission of what you guys are doing internationally with this work, it kind of raises your arms hair a little bit and gives you goosebumps just to feel the excitement and passion for that.
I think you're referring to when we met a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, Sean asked me, and I said, I think our vision is every country, every school.
Yep.
And then, to take it even a step further, it's every school, every student. And I think that is our vision. I think that the leadership principles that we have, that we teach through the 7 habits and the process of the LeaderMe are something that's valuable to every student. And we work with countries where, I hate to say it, but it almost feels like this is even more necessary than what we're doing here in the US. So I think the vision in the beginning was one that was set up by Stephen R. Covey himself. Stephen, he wanted to release human potential, and he wanted to do it in everybody. And Sean's always had the same vision that I've had, is how do we get this to every child? And so I think that's always been the vision and the mission. Executing on it, realizing that, has been a challenge. It continues to be a challenge. We've made great progress, but I think if you were just condense it down into a little phrase, it's every country, every school. And then the question is, how are we going to make that happen?
I think part of why when you say something like that, and your team of international leaders, when you all say something like that, why it resonates is because you guys, you don't say much when you talk. It's really all about your actions, and so it gets me excited. One of the things that I think about from the skeptic side, and I know you and I can get skeptical pretty quickly if we're in a room together. So the skeptic side of me wonders, one of the challenges I have to assume is, being an American-based company, how does that translate, or how is it received when we go into countries that have just different cultures? How are you able to navigate that through this work?
That's a great question. I mean, there's two big factors, I think, in what you're referring to. One is culture, right? Because there's all kinds of different cultures. I guess maybe there's 3, because I would add every country has a unique educational system. I mean, there's some similarities to how we do things in the US, but every country we go to, it seems like the Ministry of Education, they control things or do things different and whatnot. So that's a huge complexity right there. The other factor we have to deal with is politics. And I don't want to talk about politics, but I can tell you there's countries, and China, for example, specifically, where we have huge barriers because of the politics. And so, yeah, there are challenges. We can't control the politics, right? So we try to practice what we preach, and we focus on the things we can influence and can control. And the beauty, I guess the good thing, is that these principles that we teach are universal, right? It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter who you are, what you believe, what color you are, what country you're in. It just doesn't matter. These principles apply and they work. And that's the beauty of the 7 habits. And that's what we found. And we're also building on the great work that's been done the last 30 years or more of just the 7 habits in our corporate world around the world, because people around the world are familiar with Stephen. They are familiar with the 7 habits. They know Sean, they know the teens books. And so that has really opened a lot of doors for us. It doesn't make it easy, but it opens doors.
So what you've noticed is, and first off, what I find interesting is that in countries all across the world, there are corporations, I guess we started with corporations within our business unit, that see, regardless of our cultural differences, the 7 habits as something that transcends any cultural difference, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so because of that, they also believe it's beneficial for their young people in their country, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They make that connection. And it helps us, there are some countries around the world, Taiwan, for example, Japan, Romania, where I was just at 2 days ago, where most of our schools in those countries are funded by corporate donations. So that makes a huge difference because they know and they believe in what we're doing, and they can see it's going to benefit their whole society and their country by investing in the children and in these programs that we offer. So that's been a huge benefit. And even in countries where we do have political challenges, like China, where the government has, put out some pretty strict regulations on what can and can't be taught in schools and how to do it. The 7 Habits is still loved in China. I mean, it's well known and loved, but that doesn't mean they want it in their education system.
Totally. Yeah, which I completely understand. So when you say it's loved, what is there anything that you notice is unique about what they love about the 7 Habits, or does it feel to be, kind of just the same everywhere?
I don't know. The thing that just came to mind when you just said that was release human potential, right? Which is what Dr. Covey, was all about. Yep. And I think people feel that. I think when they read the 7 Habits book, when they experience the 7 Habits workshop, they feel empowered. They feel a power that I'm in charge, right? Which is what we say in the LeaderMe. In Habit 1, I'm in charge. And they get a vision of where they want to go and how to get there. And they understand and so I think it just empowers people to be who they are, right? And they like that. So the 7 Habits is so empowering that people like it and want it.
So you talked a second ago as kind of a throwaway comment of you just went to Romania, and again when we were together a few weeks ago, you're a passionate person, but I don't often see you tear up. But as we talked about what was happening in Ukraine, I felt your genuine, deep-seated emotion of, I think you said to me and us that you just can't sit idle and do nothing. And so you went to Romania. Tell us about what you did there, what you learned, and what your experience was like.
Yeah, it was a great experience. And the reason I went to Romania is basically we now have 104 LeaderMe schools in Romania. Wow. Many people don't know that. And they're great schools. One of our schools in Romania a group of students in that school decided that they wanted to make a difference for all these refugees. Now, Poland is taking in a ton of refugees from the Ukraine. Second to Poland is Romania, and it's right on the Ukrainian border. In fact, Sean went with me, and last minute he decided he wanted to go, and I'm excited he went, and it's wonderful. We actually traveled to the Ukrainian border. We got pictures of us standing on the border and where the refugees come in. Just a sideline, I have to say this. The Romanian people and the Polish people in particular, all those bordering countries, they're just doing a wonderful thing in welcoming these refugees. They're opening up their homes. They're giving them food, shelter. The border guards at the bridge that crosses the river between the Ukraine and Romania, they went out on that bridge where mothers and children cross, and they put balloons all along the bridge. And they put stuffed animals and toys along the bridge so that when these refugee children come across with their mothers, because their fathers are staying to fight, the children would feel a sense of comfort in coming into Romania. I mean, it was just touching to see this. This group of students in our LeaderMe school, it was our first LeaderMe school in Romania, and they're great leaders in this school. They said, we want to help these refugees. We want to do something. So they decided we're going to have a global humanity day and we're going to raise money for refugees. And they posted and they said, we're going to do it. And we've advertised this on our website for LeaderMe as well. And I just said, I've got to go help these students. I got to be with these students on that day. And that's why I went. The amazing thing was we participated in their day of humanity. Yep. We met with students. And this school in Romania, it's called Transylvania College. It's a great name. You get a lot of vampire jokes, Transylvania College. First time I went to Romania, I did visit the Bronze Castle where Dracula is supposed to be. But anyway, our team there are all vampires. And but they're good vampires. Anyway, these are just wonderful people. And Transylvania is a region in Romania, so you know. But it's called Transylvania College. It's a K-12 school. They have welcomed into their school 76 refugees. I mean, literally as students. And they've hired a displaced refugee teacher from the Ukraine to come into their school and work with their own refugees in the school. So when we were there the last afternoon, we spent, you know, two and a half hours just talking to these refugee students. Most of them were middle school and high school students that we spent time with. They all spoke great English. It was amazing.
Wow.
They were bright, excited. We sang songs with them. We had cultural exchange. We did a little talent show. We talked about what's happening. It was just the best time. The amazing thing, there was 2 students in that group who were from a LeaderMe school in the Ukraine. Totally by chance. And we introduced Sean, and these 2 students stood up and said, "You mean this is the LeaderMe? This is 7 Habits? We have that in our school."
Wow.
You know, for me, this just sent the message that we really are a global community.
Yep.
And, you know, we talk about, you know, my vision for international in every country, every school. You know, I want the LeaderMe, and all these global schools to be a force for good in the world. And we teach these leadership principles. And the next step is, after we teach them, we help these students do something.
Yep.
You know, show their leadership by making a positive difference in the world. I hope the LeaderMe is a movement, right? And schools around the world are saying, I want to be a LeaderMe school because I want to participate in this global community and make a difference. You know, that's my vision really for what I want to see happen.
As you're talking, I mean, you and I have worked really closely on LeaderMe schools, me in the US, you abroad, for the last decade. But I just realized there's a lot of people who may be listening who don't know what LeaderMe is. And while I can describe it and have before, I'd like for you to describe from your angle and your lens, what is LeaderMe to folks who've never heard of it before?
Well, LeaderMe is a school transformation process. That's kind of one of the taglines we use, but really it's a process where we go into a school and we help teachers, we empower teachers to help educate the students on what real leadership is all about. And it's not, you know, being the leadership in a position, but it's helping them lead their own lives and lead others. And so, you know, core to this whole process is the 7 Habits, which is of course central to our company and what we teach. And so we go into the school and we educate all the teachers on the 7 Habits. Then they help teach those same habits to the students. We teach all kinds of leadership principles, and we give them opportunities to actually practice that leadership in the school.
That's awesome. So you said there's 104 of those LeaderMe schools in Romania. What led to just a massive increase of schools?
Well, we've been working with Romania since 2015. Our first school started in 2015, and much like in the US, we started with 1 school, and they've become really a lighthouse for everyone else. And our partner there is a school owner, but she's very passionate about how do we change and mold in a positive way education in Romania. You know, Romania in 1989 transitioned from communism to capitalism and democracy. And, you know, that transition for any country takes years.
Right.
I mean, it's not overnight, right? And so there's a lot of problems in the country, and you know, our partner there sees education as a way to help solve a lot of these issues going forward. So she has gone out, and her team have gone out, and they have started an NGO, a nonprofit company, and they are actually raising funds to fund LeaderMe schools around the country. And they're lining up. I mean, we were just there. We have 104 in the process. We have 250 waiting to join that need funding.
Wow.
250. So, I mean, we believe that, you know, we can get to, I think there was 6,000 schools in the country, and we want to have at least 1,000, right?
Right.
So I think we can get there. We can get there. And then we'll really make an impact on the people and the society.
That's crazy. So they see us in Romania as a key to helping develop future leaders who aren't shackled by an old school way of thinking, and in this case, communism, right?
Yeah.
That's powerful. Is there any other case you think about our relationships across the world where, either the country itself or regions in the country see us or see this work as a way to unlock the power of their people?
Well, I think staying in the same region, I don't want to harp on it, but Ukraine. It's while the troops were amassing on the border, Sean and I and Marcel, our partner, my colleague on my team in the Netherlands, who helps oversee Europe for our team, we were on a call with our Ukrainian partners, and we had the Ukrainian government on the Zoom call with us, and we signed a memorandum of understanding with the government of Ukraine about how they're going to endorse the LeaderMe for their schools, because they knew how important it was to teach these kind of leadership principles and the 7 habits in their schools to raise up these young leaders. And unfortunately 30 days later the war started, and we had just launched during the pandemic. The last 2 years, we had just launched our business in Ukraine, and we had 3,000 students in schools and in these learning centers in Ukraine. And unfortunately it's been delayed, postponed, I think I'd say. But we're hopeful that things will settle down there and we'll be able to be back. But I think that's another example of where I think the vision is bigger. It's not just, hey, this is good for our school, let's put this in our school. It's no, these principles are universal, powerful principles that can change people, families, societies, and countries. And there are people that believe that and are doing it.
That's awesome. I think when our paths first crossed a decade ago, and probably a little bit after we just met, I think your work in Brazil was probably the hottest topic at that time. I'm sure that you've done a lot over the time. Can you tell us a little bit about what partnership has looked like in Brazil? Yeah,
I was just on a call with our Brazilian team this morning. We have about 1,000 schools in Brazil.
Wow.
And Brazil, when I started this whole division, or this whole team within our education division in 2011, Brazil was the first partner that we signed up.
Right.
And the company back then was called Abril, and now it's called Somos Education, but because they've transitioned and had a couple owners, but it's the same vision and same power. But they're the largest curriculum publisher in Brazil. And in Brazil, many of the schools, they use learning systems where a school will subscribe. This isn't necessarily from the government. They'll buy curriculum from these education companies and integrate it throughout their school. And they were really strong on academics. And when I went to Brazil and we met with them, I talked to them about, hey, the LeaderMe and what we do is really about whole child education. You guys are already strong in academics, but what about leadership and culture? And this is the piece you need to bring in to round out everything. And they loved the idea, and we put it together, and now they're our largest partner and continue to be our largest partner around the world.
We talked also briefly about possibly a vision for Africa, or a passion or desire for Africa. Do we have any relationships in Africa right now? I know that's a big statement.
Well, we have a few LeaderMe schools there. Most of our efforts in Africa to date have been through our enterprise or our corporate partners there with FranklinCovey, who have said, hey, we want to influence education. I think we're moving in a new direction. And my vision is, we need to find some real strong education players there. I mean, we think about Africa. Africa is tons of countries, right? And it's a continent, right? With a lot of countries. There's multiple languages, multiple cultures. It's quite complex. They do deal with a lot of poverty still. There's still a lot of corruption, right? In many of the governments there, unfortunately, just to be frank. But they also see the value of this, and we have people that are passionate about this. I think our direction in Africa now is, can we find some ed tech partners that could reach a broader audience in Africa quicker? And I think we need to look at what's the possibility of going directly to parents and their children and families, kind of a B2C kind of play, not only going us directly to schools. I think both are important. But we are in talks with a couple companies in Africa that are in the ed tech space that I think we're going to see some really great ideas and great things happen in the coming future.
So when you think about, your goal of every country, every school, every student, what are the biggest opportunities and what are the biggest challenges that you're trying to tackle right now with your team?
Well, I think Africa is a big challenge. Like I said, we've barely scratched the surface, and it's huge.
Yeah.
So I think we need to practice what we preach. We need to have new paradigms. We need to see things in a new way, and then we'll start doing things in a new way to get the results that we want, or new and different results. So I think we need a new paradigm, and we're trying to focus on that. So Africa is definitely one. We have another region of the world, which is the Middle East. We've actually recently just localized all of our content on our platform into Arabic, and we have a couple partners, and we're talking to an additional partner in Bahrain, and we really think there's a great potential for growth there. We have a great opportunity in Mexico right now with a whole group of schools. We've barely scratched the surface in just so many countries. Spain, we've got a great partner in Spain and just getting started, and we've made some inroads there. I think Romania has huge opportunity for growth.
Right.
The UK, we could go throughout. I think the pandemic has really slowed us up a little bit, but it was a bump in the road. Back in 2020, the first half of the year, our year, we were having one of our best years ever. And we were just like, wow, we finally got this thing rolling, and we got new schools coming on, and then the pandemic hit, and it's just slowed things down, and we're starting to see that momentum come back. We're starting to see it come back, and we're really excited.
Well, you have a phenomenal team. And like I said, I get energy every time I'm around you. Before we transition to our last few questions, you've had some really unique opportunities to visit some really cool schools across the world. And I'm just curious if there are any of those stories that you think of often to re-inspire you for this work. Like when you visit a school and talk to a student, or when you visit a school and just felt the community passion around this work and the life-changing impact of the work that, you just have, that's just deep in your heart, that anytime anybody asks you why you do it, you're like, oh, well, this story, let me tell you about this experience or this experience. I'm just curious about one of those, two of those experiences you've had that you use as that fire to keep you going.
Well, there's probably, there's a lot of them. I think fresh on my mind is where I was just at in Eastern Europe with this experience with the war going on and what we're doing. One of the requests, I'll just add this in as part of an answer to this. I think one of the requests we get from schools around the world is their desire to connect globally. And so I think one of the initiatives we really want to look at on my team is how do we set up a global connect network, if I can get that out, and encompass all our schools here in the U.S. and outside the U.S. and have some formal system whereby they can connect, to share, have interaction with students and teachers and exchanges and events together. I think that's huge. I have been to schools. I've been to schools in India that these children are just so beautiful, but their environment around them is very challenging. I'm just inspired when I see these, especially the elementary school students, get up and when it's not even memorized, but they're talking about how the things they're learning in the LeaderMe process and in the 7 Habits has helped them. I remember a teacher in China. We went to her school, and she showed us her school, and it was dilapidated. It was run down. It just was terrible. And she begged us, I want to do the Leader in Me because I want to transform my school. There's just such a need out there, and it's just everywhere I go, you see it. It's every school I visit, you feel it, and you feel it's when you go to the schools that are in remote places, yep, where maybe they don't have the opportunities that other parts of the world have, and you see how these principles are making a difference with them. So when I say every country, every school, it's a big task. And what we do, there's fees for what we do, and we have to pay our people and pay us. but this is a mission. And one of the challenges that we have is how do we fund this so it can get to everybody?
Yep.
And make a difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, like I said earlier, again, you and I don't mix words, especially when we're together. And so I hope you know my compliments of you in terms of about you are someone who walks first and then speaks. Even though when you speak loud and can fire people up.
Sometimes too loud, but that's
right.
okay.
I sign up for that every day of the week. And so I'm inspired. You know, I know that you feel like you've only scratched the surface in a lot of your impact, but I think the impact you're having, I mean, it's clear through your trip to Romania and the growth that's happening there, that you're making a massive difference in the world. And I thank you for that. So the last few questions that we ask everybody this season is, first one, what is a habit, or what are the habits and disciplines that you use on a daily or weekly basis that you think make you the best version of yourself?
Well, that's a great question. And you want the good habits, right? Not the bad ones.
I'll take them all, actually.
I'll only share the good ones, right? You know what? I do love to exercise. And I try to make it a habit, and I am making it a habit to, I get in the exercise room. I usually do it at least every other day. I'm getting older, and I like to run. So I run, or I do the treadmill, but knees are getting older. So I try not to do it every day. It's a little hard. But so I think taking care of your body, the physical exercise, is really something that is a habit, and I'm pretty committed to doing.
I figured you were going to say Zumba, but I'm glad to know you're a runner. I thought you'd be Zumba, but that's okay.
No, what do you mean a Zumba? No, I'm not into Zumba, man. But I do I used to play basketball all the time, and it's just, I just had my birthday, by the way, so I'm 59. So I need to take care of my knees and back. My wife plays pickleball like every day, but I have meetings in the morning when she goes and plays. So she wants me to play, but I'll have to figure that out. You guys know pickleball, right?
Yeah, of course. It's hot here in the Midwest as well.
Really big in our community here. So I think exercise is one. I think exercising, what we teach in the 7 habits is body, heart, mind, and spirit. And I think that reading, I love to read, and kind of histories and about different cultures and countries. Particularly like Mitch Albom.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know his books. Stranger in the Lifeboat is one that I just read the most recently. It just came out. Gave copies to all my kids at Christmas. Just an amazing book. Yeah.
I mean, you beat me to my second question. So clearly you've listened to the podcast before, which is great. But it is like, what are the books that have made the biggest impact on you, either recently that you've read or throughout time, that have made a big impact on you?
Yeah, well, like I said, I love reading books about different cultures. And right, you can't see it, but it's just on the other side of the computer right there on the bookshelf on the wall. I've got like a couple rows of books just on international culture and also on leadership and just on inspiration. I love to read, and it's just like Stephen's work. It's you can go back and read this stuff, and it's still applicable today. I've got books. In fact, I like to collect some older books. I got books from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and talking about leadership, and it's amazing. They're saying the same thing we're saying. They might have did it in a little different way because of the times, but it's really the same stuff. So I've got a whole library of stuff like that.
When you talk about trying to get my head around yours, is that do you just pick up any book and learn about international culture, or do you think, hey, I'm getting ready to go to Romania, or right now with all the stuff in Ukraine, I find myself consuming a lot of books, periodicals, anything on Ukraine history, Russian relations, Russian history and leadership. So like I've gone down a lot of those rabbit trails lately. How do you start down your rabbit trail? How do you choose which country?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, nowadays, to be honest, a lot of my reading, if I'm going somewhere, is really done with the internet. I can source things, I can find things, and I can read articles and do it. So I mean, everything's at our fingertips. In my library of books, which is not huge, but I've got some old standards on culture and books, and there's some that deal with different countries. I was big, because my education and a lot of my experience was in Asia. I did a lot of Asian studies. I mean, I majored in that as well. So I've got a lot of old stuff on that. I've really enjoyed this position because I've really learned a lot more about European history, and my wife loves to travel when I go to Europe with me. And Europe is it's an exciting and interesting place. Yeah. So most of the stuff now is done short term. It's online.
Yeah. All right. Next question is, and I prepped you for this one. I assume everyone listens to music. If they don't listen to music, they listen to podcasts or something. So we'll just start with the assumption of music. When you're driving in your car or when you're on, you say you're a runner, so maybe you take your phone with you or some headphones with you on your run. What's on your playlist?
Well, I'm a child of the late 70s and early 80s. So who does that? I mean, we're talking classic rock, but not the hard, real. But one of my favorite bands of all times was Styx.
Yep.
I love that. You've got Foreigner, you've got Journey, REO Speedwagon, those classics, right? They're still classics today.
Yes.
Right? They are. So, when I go on a playlist, I'll choose, or Chicago, a little more mellow. I love Chicago. Yep. And you say Chicago today, and then you talk about their stuff, 20, 30 years ago, and the kids today don't know what it is, but it's still Chicago. Right?
Yep.
So,
no, those are.
So that's what I love. Those. Yeah.
That's awesome. My Journey is something that's obviously there's plenty of songs in there that are popular, but there's one particular song that everybody knows that my wife and I, it goes back to like one of our first dates. And so we are passionate about just Journey themselves, but Styx, I think, what is it? Come Sail Away is one of them.
That's a classic.
Yeah. I think Renegade was another one.
Renegade. Babe.
No.
You remember that one? That was like #1 song.
Well, I did my best to get those two out of my head. I just remember you're a little bit older than me. I wasn't quite in the midst of the Styx revolution when they were out, but my parents liked good music, and so they introduced me to all of this growing up. So anyways, last question. You're around phenomenal leaders all the time and you read. And so I'm just curious, when you think about giving advice to people who are in, it's a crazy time to be a leader of any organization, but particularly a school. What's the best piece of leadership advice you've come across recently that's just been on your mind or on your heart lately?
I think this particular advice would be kind of a culmination of what I've felt and learned from all the teachers that I've had, including the ones and the great leaders I work with now in this company and outside. When I was with the students in Romania, and they were doing this Humanity Day, and I said a few words to them, and I what they were doing for others was just amazing. These students said, we want to make a difference, and so they acted, right? And I thought about that, and that's true leadership, right? And they took the initiative and they did it. And I feel like greatness in life and leadership really starts with humility, because you got to get out of yourself. If it's about you, you're not a good leader, right? It's got to be about everybody else and the people. And so humility is where it starts, but that humility will lead to doing things for others, which is charity. So I would say that leadership starts with humility and it ends with charity. And it's what you do in between to get there is what's important. And I think that's what a great leader does. If you think of people that are remembered around the world throughout history, a lot of people are remembered for a lot of things, but if you think of some of the great ones, they're remembered not for what they did per se, but what they did for others. Yep. And then if you think the people that were the evilest, wickedest people, leaders in the world that did atrocities, they were remembered for what they did to people. Yep. That wasn't good, right? Yep. So, I think that's what the LeaderMe is all about, and what we do in the company is helping people get out of themselves and serve others. That's why I'd like to see this be a movement around the world, and a force for good. And my dog just came in.
That's all right. Perfect timing as we wrap up. Bill,
so, be a force for good. Yeah.
I would say, you definitely are a humble. I like the fact that you share your opinions. And I think I want to remind people is that being humble doesn't mean you're quiet, right? I think that's completely fair. Humble is not about, there's just no ego to that leadership. And I think you embody that. And that's why I was excited to have you on. And I appreciate you making time in your crazy schedule. I don't know, I'm curious, like when you have your meetings, you say you can't go play pickleball with your wife on certain days. I assume you have days that are probably, you have meetings at 2 a.m. and then meetings at 7 p.m. that day. Is that true?
Yeah, well, 2 p.m. is a little extreme, or 2 a.m. is a little extreme, but we start meetings sometimes anywhere from 6 a.m., but I'm on calls sometimes 9 or 10 at night as well.
Right.
So I do, the other thing I like to do that I didn't mention, I like to go hiking and fishing. So sometimes a 2-hour break in the afternoon, it's good to do those things.
Yeah, and then you know that you have like a 10 o'clock at night call.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you making time for us and between all of that. I hope we didn't get in the way of too much of your exercise or walking or fishing today, but this was awesome. And I appreciate all your work and I appreciate your vision that's inspiring all of us.
Thank you. It's great to be with you all.
Please support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, podcast on Apple or Spotify, and help us celebrate the beautiful, messy work of shaping human potential.